All right, Algebra 2, Lecture 329, 330, and 331. That's going to be 3 days worth. Next week, the 29th, 30th, and 31st, we'll do this stuff, and then we'll have a test on April 1st. So that's the plan. The student will identify the dimensions of a matrix. Well, I want to talk about what a matrix is. We'll define that here in just a second. Add and subtract matrices. The word matrices is the plural of the word matrix. So if you have one of them, it's a matrix. If you have more than one, you have matrices. So we're going to add and subtract matrices if possible and determine whether the sum or difference of matrices is defined. Okay. Basically, if they have the same dimensions, you can add them together and then it's defined. Let's talk about that real quick. A matrix is a rectangular array. You can think of an array as just an arrangement, a rectangular arrangement or a rectangular array of numbers within brackets. And they're arranged in rows and columns. Here's a matrix right here. Columns go up and down. There are 3 columns in this case. And they're like the columns of a building. That's how you can easily remember which one is columns. Are these columns or are these columns? Well, the columns in a building go up and down, and the columns in a matrix also go up and down. So there are 3 columns, 2 rows. Okay, and we would call this matrix A. This is a rectangular array of numbers that are within brackets. That's what the definition of a matrix, or one definition of a matrix is right there. Let's talk about matrices real quick. Each number in a matrix is called an element of the matrix. So these are all individual elements of matrix A. In matrix A, element A sub 12, or element 1, 2, would be the element that's in row 1, column 2. So row 1 is the top row, column 2. So that would be this element right here. It's in this row and in this column, so it has to be this element. So A sub 12, element A sub 12, or element A12 is 4. Okay. Let's take a look at this. The dimensions of a matrix are stated as the number of rows by the number of columns. Well, I have 2 rows, I have 3 columns, so if I'm going to state the dimensions, I'm going to say it's a 2 by 3. 2 by 3 matrix. The dimensions are stated as the number of rows by columns, R by C. Rows by columns, 2 by 3. And this says that very same thing, I think. The dimensions of matrix A, that's this one, are 2 by 3, which reads 2 by 3. When you see it like this, 2x3, that means 2 by 3 when we're talking about matrices. It's kind of like when you go to the lumberyard and you see a 2 by 4, it's stamped on the end of it. 2x4, you don't read that 2x4, you say 2 by 4, 2 by 3 in this case. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to matrices. Rectangular array of numbers within brackets arranged in rows and columns, and they're in brackets. So let's see what we're going to do here. Our objective is to add these together. Adding and subtracting matrices. The matrices can be added or subtracted only if they have the same dimensions. So they have to have the same number of rows and the same number of columns if we're going to add them together. And then if they have the same dimensions, we add or subtract corresponding elements. That means you're going to add the top left element of one matrix to the top left element of another matrix, so forth and so on. So let's take a look at what it looks like. Simplify. Rows by columns, I got a 3 by 2. And I'm adding it to another 3 by 2, so I can add these together. And I'm just going to add them by adding the corresponding elements. So this will be this element, this matrix right here. Say 2 plus negative 3, that's negative 1. Then 6 plus negative 2, that's 4. See what's going on here? Added top right to top right. Added top left to top left. Now I'm going to add this one to this one. 5 plus 5. Always visit this. 5 plus 5 is 10. Negative 4 plus negative 5 is negative 9. They're the same sign, so we add, keep the sign. Negative 4 plus negative 5 is negative 9. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. They're different signs, so we subtract and keep the sign of the one with the greater absolute value. So the sum of these matrices is this matrix right here, if I haven't made any mistakes. Then I have my little key right here, so I'll check it and make sure, because I am prone to making mistakes sometimes. But yeah, I got it right. That's adding matrices. You have to add corresponding elements. Let's take a look at another one. There we go. Here I'm going to subtract matrices, and this is the same thing. Adding and subtracting matrices, you add or subtract the corresponding elements. So we got to watch out. We got to follow our rules for addition and subtraction. When I make sure I have the same number of rows and columns, I have 3 rows, 3 columns, 3 rows, 3 columns, so I'm good to go. I'm going to go negative 5 minus negative 4. I'm going to do that right over here. Negative 5 minus negative 4. Negative 5 minus negative 4. Well, this double negative is actually positive. That's negative 5 plus 4. These are different signs, so it's going to be subtract. Keep the sign of the one with the greater absolute value. So this negative 5 minus negative 4 will be negative 1. 6 minus negative 6, 6 minus negative 6, that's a double negative, so that's actually positive 12. We're going to add. So that would be 12. And here we have negative 2 minus 5. Negative 2 minus 5. And these are the same signs, so I'm going to add them together and keep the sign. All right, there's our top row. I added the corresponding elements, or subtracted actually. I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of them. I'm going to subtract the corresponding elements, but I'm not going to bother showing the arithmetic over here. I'm going to be doing it in my head, so save a little bit of time and space. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. Negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. And there's our matrix. This matrix is the difference between these two matrices. Okay? And let's see if I got that right. Yay! It's easy to make little arithmetic mistakes. I try not to. It's embarrassing when I do, but sometimes I do. Well, let's take a look at another one. I think this is our last one. I'm going to check. I've got 3 rows, 3 columns, 3 rows, only 2 columns. This is not defined. We can't add them together. It's not defined. That's the easiest one right there. Okay, well, let's see what that says. It says undefined, yay. So there we are. That's how we add and subtract matrices. And matrices are very useful, which we will find out later. It's our objective. You can do this.